The emergency beacon screamed across 17 star systems before anyone bothered to answer it. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the Galactic Council's grand chamber, her human-made boots clicking against marble that had been quarried from dead worlds. Above her, the dome stretched impossibly high, filled with floating platforms where alien delegates whispered among themselves. None of them looked at her. "The motion has been seconded," announced Praetor Veltar, his 6 arms gesturing dismissively. The towering insectoid's voice echoed through translation implants embedded in every delegate's skull. "Humanity's request for aid in the Kepler crisis is denied." Sarah's jaw tightened. Around her, 300 species murmured their approval. The Zephyrians with their crystal wings chimed in harmony. The Molten Collective's lava blood representatives rumbled deep bass notes of agreement. Even the peaceful Cloudwalkers from the Outer Rim nodded their ethereal heads. "Praetor," Sarah said, her voice carrying despite the chamber's size. "The Kepler system contains 4 billion human lives. The stellar cascade will reach them in 6 months. We need—" "What you need," interrupted Counselor Thex of the Hegemony, his tentacles writhing with amusement, "is to learn responsibility. Humans have been warned about stellar mining in unstable systems for 2 centuries. You ignored every regulation, every safety protocol we established." A wave of clicking, chittering, and harmonic agreement swept through the chamber. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. She'd spent 15 years as humanity's voice here, building relationships, negotiating trade agreements, even arranging joint scientific ventures. And now, when her species faced extinction, these same allies turned their backs. "We're offering full resource sharing," she pressed on. "Our entire industrial output for the next 50 years, our research data, our colony rights in the Perseus arm." "Denied," Veltar repeated. "The motion to provide aid has failed by a vote of 273 to 17, with 10 abstentions." Sarah stared at the numbers floating in the air above the praetors. Platform, 17. Out of 300 species, only 17 had voted to help humanity survive. "This is how it ends, then?" she asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, Sarah thought she might have reached them. Then Thex's laughter bubbled through his vocal sac. "Humans," he said, "always so dramatic. You'll find a way. You always do. Perhaps this time you'll learn to ask nicely before destroying star systems." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 4 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. The diplomacy, the careful words, the desperate pleading, all of it fell away like a discarded mask. "You're right," she said. "We will find a way." Something in her tone made Veltar's mandibles click nervously. "Ambassador Chen, surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Praetor. I'm making a statement." Sarah's voice carried a new quality now, something that made the smaller species on the lower platforms shift uncomfortably. "Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately." The chamber erupted. Delegates shrieked, roared, and buzzed their outrage. Through it all, Sarah walked steadily toward the exit, her footsteps echoing off the ancient marble. "You cannot survive without us," Thex called after her. "Your technology, your trade routes, your very existence depends on the Council." Sarah paused at the massive doors, carved from the living wood of the First World to join the Council 3,000 years ago. She didn't turn around. "We'll see," she said. The doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder. Outside, Captain Marcus Webb waited beside Sarah's transport, his weathered face grim. "I heard the vote," he said as she approached. "Then you know we have work to do." Sarah climbed into the sleek vehicle, designed by human engineers but built with Zephyrian crystal technology. In 6 months, she thought, it would be one of the last such collaborations ever made. "The fleet's already mobilizing," Webb said as they lifted off from the Council's spire. "Admiral Rodriguez has every available ship moving toward Kepler. But Sarah—" He hesitated. "Even with everything we've got, we can't evacuate 4 billion people." Sarah watched the spire shrink below them, its alien architecture growing small and distant. "We're not evacuating anyone, Marcus. What? We're going to stop the cascade. Webb nearly choked. That's impossible. The stellar mechanics alone are beyond current galactic understanding. Yes, I know. Sarah leaned back in her seat, a small smile playing at her lips. Good thing we stopped being galactic citizens 5 minutes ago. As their transport climbed toward the jump point, Sarah activated her personal communicator. The encryption was purely human. No galactic standard protocols, no council oversight. This is Ambassador Chen to all human vessels and colonies, she broadcast. Operation Exodus is now in effect. Repeat, Operation Exodus is now in effect. Cut all ties with council species immediately. Recall all citizens from alien territories. And wake up the sleeping giants. Webb's eyes widened. Sarah, the giants have been in cryo for 60 years. I know. Her smile grew sharper. I think it's time they met our new neighbors. In the depths of space, in hidden facilities that had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, ancient machinery began to hum. Stasis pods that had waited in darkness for decades suddenly blazed with light, and something that had been sleeping began to wake up. Chapter 2. The Sleeping Giants Doctor. Elena Vasquez had been dead for exactly 63 years, 4 months and 16 days. The first thing she noticed as consciousness returned was the taste of copper in her mouth. The second was the soft chime of medical equipment that definitely hadn't existed when she'd gone under. The third was the young man standing beside her cryopod, wearing clothes that screamed future fashion disaster. Dr. Vasquez. His voice carried an accent she couldn't place. I'm Dr. James Okafor, head of the Resurrection Project. The year is 2387. Humanity needs you. Elena tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Every joint in her body felt like it had been replaced with rusty hinges. The war, she croaked, ended 4 decades after you went under, Okafor said gently. Humanity won. The Devourers were completely destroyed. Good. Elena finally managed to prop herself up. The room around her was clearly a medical bay, but everything looked impossibly advanced. Holographic displays floated in midair, showing her vital signs in real time. Though I'm guessing you didn't wake me up to reminisce about old victories. We need the Prometheus drive, Okafor said simply. Elena laughed, a sound like grinding. Ears. Kid, the Prometheus drive was theoretical even when I designed it. We never got past the initial simulations. We know. But we've had 60 years to work on it. Okafor gestured, and the air above them filled with 3-dimensional blueprints. Your theoretical framework, combined with discoveries we've made since then. We think we can build it. Elena stared at the designs floating before her. They were hers, but evolved, refined, improved beyond anything she'd imagined. The basic concept was simple enough. A drive system that could push matter through higher dimensions, bypassing the normal restrictions of spacetime, what she'd called riding the cosmic subway system. This is, she paused, running calculations in her head. This is insane. The power requirements alone would drain a star. We know where to get the power, Okafor said quietly. Elena looked at him sharply. From where? Instead of answering, Okafor helped her to her feet and led her to a viewport. Outside, Elena saw not the Earth she remembered, but a massive space station unlike anything in her experience. Ships moved between docking bays, but these weren't the sleek council vessels she'd seen in historical footage. These were purely human designs, angular and aggressive, built for function over form. Welcome to Haven Station, Okafor said. Humanity's new home. New home? What happened to Earth? Still there, still populated. But this is where we keep the important stuff. He gestured toward the viewport. Dr. Vasquez, in the 60 years since your death, humanity has made contact with 300 alien species. We joined something called the Galactic Council. We thought we'd found our place in the universe. Elena watched a massive cargo ship dock with the station. Even at this distance, she could see it was carrying something that made space itself shimmer around its hull. Let me guess, she said. We were wrong. Yesterday, they voted to let 4 billion humans die rather than risk their own resources, helping us. Okafor's voice carried an edge of cold fury. They laughed at our ambassador when she begged for aid. And now? Now we're going to show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner. Okafor smiled, and Elena felt a chill run down her spine. It was the same smile she'd worn when she'd first proposed using black holes as weapons during the Devourer War. The Kepler system, she said, understanding flooding through her. You're not just trying to save those 4 billion people. You're going to do something that proves humanity doesn't need the Council. Something more than that. Okafor pulled up another set of schematics. We're going to do something that proves the Council needs humanity, whether they want to admit it or not. Elena studied the new designs. They showed the Prometheus drive, but not mounted on a ship. Instead, it was integrated into something much larger, something that looked suspiciously like, "Is that a planet?" she whispered. "Moon, actually. Europa. We've been hollowing it out for 30 years, building the drive system inside. When it's complete, we'll have a mobile base that can go anywhere, in the galaxy instantaneously." Elena stared at the blueprints, her mind racing. The implications were staggering. A moon-sized vessel that could appear anywhere without warning, carrying whatever cargo humanity chose to load onto it. It would make every alien fleet obsolete overnight. "How long?" she asked. "With your help?" 6 months, just in time to save Kepler. "And if the Council tries to stop us?" Okafor's smile widened. "Let them try. We've got some other surprises they don't know about." As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the medical bay in red as Okafor's communicator crackled to life. "Dr. Okafor to the command center immediately," a voice announced. "We have incoming Council warships. Looks like they've decided diplomacy is over." Elena watched through the viewport as distant stars began moving in patterns that meant only one thing: ships dropping out of hyperspace. A lot of ships. "Seems they don't want us to finish our project," she observed. "Then they should have helped us when we asked nicely," Okafor replied. "Come on, Dr. Vasquez. Time to show these aliens what human ingenuity looks like when we stop playing by their rules." As they left the medical bay, Elena caught one last glimpse of the blueprints floating in the air. The Prometheus drive, humanity's greatest theoretical achievement, was about to become very, very real. She just hoped the galaxy was ready for what came next. Chapter 3. The price of abandonment. Admiral Sofia Rodriguez had commanded fleets, in 3 wars negotiated peace treaties with 7 alien species, and once stared down a Zephyrian war council without blinking. None of that had prepared her for what she saw on her tactical display. 200 ships and counting, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the sensor station. Council vessels from at least 40 different species. They're maintaining formation at the edge of the system. Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest dreadnought, watching the alien fleet take position. Through the massive viewport, she could see Haven Station in the distance, its construction bays working frantically to complete projects that had been decades in the making. "They're hailing us," announced Communications Officer Chen. "Put it through." The main screen shimmered, revealing Praetor Veltar's insectoid face. Behind him, Rodriguez could see the bridge of a council command ship, filled with representatives from dozens of species. "Admiral Rodriguez," Veltar began, his translated voice carrying artificial authority. "By order of the Galactic Council, you will cease all military preparations and submit to inspection. Intelligence reports suggest you are developing weapons in violation of the Stellar Accords." Rodriguez kept her expression neutral. "Praetor, this is human space. You have no authority here." "We have every authority. These weapons threaten galactic stability." "What weapons?" Rodriguez asked innocently. "We're conducting asteroid mining operations. Surely that's not against Council law." A new voice cut in. Counselor Thex, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "Do not insult our intelligence, human. We know you have awakened your war criminals." "War criminals?" "The monsters who butchered the Devourers. The same humans who turned an entire species into radioactive dust using forbidden technologies." Rodriguez felt her jaw clench. The Devourer War had ended before she was born, but every human child learned about it in school. an alien species that consumed other sentient beings, spreading across the galaxy like a plague, until humanity had been forced to develop weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. The Devourers were an existential threat to all galactic life, she said carefully. The Council approved our methods at the time. Approved out of desperation, Veltar interjected. We never intended for those weapons, or their creators, to survive the war. The confession hung in the air like a physical thing. Rodriguez felt something cold settle in her chest. You've been planning this, she said quietly. The vote to deny aid to Kepler. It wasn't about stellar mining violations. You wanted us to die. Thex's laughter bubbled through the comm system. The galaxy has been peaceful for 60 years, Admiral. But humans are a disease. You create, you destroy, you refuse to accept limits. We thought time might civilize you. Instead, you've grown stronger. So you decided to let 4 billion of us die to see if that would calm us down. If it had worked, the remainder of your species might have learned humility. Veltar's mandibles clicked with what Rodriguez now recognized as satisfaction. Instead, you've proven our point. Faced with extinction, humans don't seek compromise. You create weapons. Rodriguez looked around her bridge, seeing the faces of her crew. Human faces wearing expressions of growing understanding and cold fury. You're right, she said finally. We do create weapons, especially when backed into corners by people who pretend to be our friends. Surrender now, Veltar demanded, and we will ensure your species survives in a supervised capacity. Refuse and face the consequences. Rodriguez smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Praetor, I'd like you to meet some old friends of ours. She nodded to her communications officer. Patch me through to the fleet. The display split, showing not just the Council ships but dozens of human vessels spread throughout the system. Rodriguez could see the familiar outlines of destroyers, cruisers, and the massive bulk of 3 other dreadnoughts. But she could also see shapes that didn't belong to any normal fleet. Sleek, predatory vessels that looked like they'd been grown rather than built. Ships that seemed to bend light around themselves, making them hard to focus on. Those are Devourer ships, Thex whispered, his voice filled with horror. We're Devourer ships, Rodriguez corrected. We've spent 60 years reverse engineering their technology, improving it, making it ours. She leaned forward. Did you really think we'd throw away weapons that could end a galactic plague? The silence from the Council fleet was deafening. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this system, Rodriguez continued. After that, we demonstrate why the galaxy needed our monsters to save them from other monsters. You're bluffing, Veltar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Rodriguez nodded again. Around Haven Station, the modified Devourer vessels began to move, their hulls rippling with energy patterns that made reality itself seem unstable. These ships can phase through normal matter. Their weapons consume energy at the molecular level. They're powered by miniature black holes that we've learned to control. She paused, letting that sink in. We didn't just defeat the Devourers, Praetor. We became better Devourers. Alarm klaxons began sounding on the Council ships as their sensors registered energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. This is your final warning, Rodriguez said. Leave now, or discover what 60 years of human anger and ingenuity looks like when we stop pretending to be civilized. The Council fleet began backing away from the system's edge, but not fast enough. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Park called out, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from Europa. Whatever they're building in there, it's powering up. Rodriguez felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet as something incomprehensibly powerful came online. Through the viewport, she could see Europa itself beginning to glow. Counselor Thex, she said, still watching the moon that was no longer just a moon. You asked what weapons we were building. Would you like a demonstration? Europa vanished. One moment it was there, glowing like a small star. The next moment it was simply gone, leaving only empty space where humanity's greatest achievement had been. Then the emergency broadcasts started coming in from across the galaxy. Admiral, Communications Officer Chen's voice was shrill with disbelief. I'm receiving reports from Council homeworlds. Europa just appeared in the Velteran system, directly between their primary star and capital world. They're reporting massive tidal effects, atmospheric disruption. Rodriguez smiled, grimly. Tell Europa to stay there for exactly 60 seconds, then jump back. Yes, ma'am. On the main screen, she could see Veltar's compound eyes wide with shock. Behind him, the bridge of his command ship was in chaos as reports flooded in from his homeworld. Impossible, he whispered. Nothing that large can move instantaneously across the galaxy. Nothing you understand can do that, Rodriguez corrected. But then you never bothered to understand us, did you? She stood, her uniform crisp despite the tension in the air. Europa will return to our system momentarily. When it does, we'll give you a choice. The moon reappeared exactly where it had been, as if it had never left. Except now everyone in the galaxy knew what humanity had built. You can honor your original alliance with us, Rodriguez continued. Help us save Kepler, presume trade, pretend this never happened. Or, Veltar asked weakly, or we finish what we started here. Europa was just the beginning, Praetor. We have 4 more moons under construction, each one equipped with weapons that make the Devourer fleet look like toys. Rodriguez's smile turned predatory. How do you think your 300 species will react when they realize their homeworlds can be moved into the event horizon of a black hole with 60 seconds notice? The Council fleet began jumping away without waiting for official orders. In minutes, only a handful of ships remained, those belonging to the 17 species that had voted to help humanity. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. To our friends who remained, thank you. You'll find our new partnership much more beneficial than the old Council arrangements. She cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Lieutenant Commander Park, start scanning for any Council ships that might be hiding in the system. Communications. Send word to all human colonies. Phase 2 is now active. What's Phase 2? Asked Chen. Rodriguez looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, 4 billion humans waited to learn if they would live or die. Phase 2, she said quietly, is when we show the galaxy what happens when you force humanity to evolve. Chapter 4. The New Galactic Order. The Kepler system was dying. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, humanity's first fully operational dimensional jump ship, watching the star that would kill 4 billion people in less than 3 months. The stellar cascade had accelerated beyond all predictions, turning Kepler's sun into a ticking bomb that would sterilize everything within 20 light years. Still think this is insane, muttered Chief Engineer Williams from his station. We're talking about moving an entire star system. Not moving it, Elena corrected, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Saving it. She turned to her navigation officer. Lieutenant Torres, status on the dimensional anchors? All 7 moons are in position, Dr. Vasquez. Europa's leading the formation, with Luna, Titan, Ganymede, Enceladus, Io, and Triton maintaining perfect synchronization. Elena nodded. Each moon had been hollowed out and equipped with Prometheus drive technology, turning them into mobile fortresses capable of bending space-time itself. It had taken 60 years to build the first one. Humanity had completed the other 6 in 3 months, working with the desperate efficiency of a species that had nothing left to lose. Incoming transmission from Admiral Rodriguez announced. Communications Officer Park. The main screen flickered, showing Rodriguez aboard the Defiance. Behind her, Elena could see the rest of humanity's fleet, ships that combined human engineering with 60 years of salvaged alien technology and reverse-engineered devourer biotech. Dr. Vasquez, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Council species are mobilizing their fleets. How many? All of them. 3,000 ships from 297 species. They're calling it the Grand Alliance. Elena felt a cold smile touch her lips. They left out 3 species. The ones who voted to help us, Rodriguez confirmed. The Kythera, the Remnant Collective, and the Deep Swimmers have officially withdrawn from the Council. They're requesting sanctuary in human space. Granted, What about the others? They're demanding we surrender the Prometheus technology and submit to complete disarmament. They claim we're threatening galactic stability. Elena looked out at the dying star, feeling the weight of 4 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. They're right. We are threatening their stability, a galaxy where humans can be discarded whenever it's convenient. There's more, Rodriguez continued. We've intercepted communications between Council fleets. They're not just planning to stop us from saving Kepler. They want to use the stellar cascade as a weapon. What? They're going to redirect the cascade toward human colonies. Turn our own crisis into a tool for genocide. Rodriguez's expression was grim. Elena, they're planning to wipe out our entire species. Elena closed her eyes, feeling something shift inside her chest. The last restraint, the final hope that somehow this could end without bloodshed, snapped like an overstressed cable. How long until they arrive? 2 days, maybe less. Elena opened her eyes and her crew stepped back instinctively. The woman who had been humanity's greatest theoretical physicist was gone. In her place stood something harder, colder, forged by 60 years of death and the desperate fury of a species betrayed. Signal the other moons, she ordered. Begin Phase 3. Ma'am, Lieutenant Torres said hesitantly. Phase 3 wasn't supposed to begin until we'd saved Kepler and negotiated a peaceful resolution with the Council, Elena finished. But they've made that impossible. She turned to face her crew. We're not just saving 4 billion humans anymore. We're saving humanity itself. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of advanced technology that shouldn't have existed for another 1,000 years. What are your orders? Rodriguez asked from the screen. Tell the Council fleets they have 12 hours to withdraw from all human systems. After that, we demonstrate what 60 years of planning looks like when we stop holding back. And if they refuse? Elena looked out at the cascade, watching stellar matter spiral into patterns that would soon become a wave of annihilation. In 3 months, it would reach the inner system, unless someone with the right technology intervened. Then we show them that humans don't just evolve when you back us into corners, she said quietly. We transcend. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and her crew. Through the viewport she could see the other moons, taking position around Kepler's star, their hulls glowing with energy that bent space itself. Dr. Vasquez, Chief Engineer Williams said carefully, the energy requirements for Phase 3, and we're talking about drawing power directly from the star's cascade. If we miscalculate— We won't miscalculate, Elena interrupted. We've run the simulations 10,000 times. We know exactly what we're doing. And if the Council fleets arrive while we're in the middle of the process? Elena smiled, and Williams felt his blood chill. It was the same expression she'd worn when she'd first proposed using dimensional technology as a weapon during the Devourer War. Then they'll get to watch humanity become something the galaxy has never seen before. 27 hours later, the Council's Grand Alliance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. 3,000 ships from across the galaxy, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. They arrived to find 7 moons arranged around a dying star in a perfect heptagonal formation, their hulls blazing with energy that made sensor readings fluctuate wildly, and at the center of it all the stellar cascade was slowing down. Impossible, whispered Praetor Veltar from the bridge of the Alliance flagship. They're actually stabilizing the cascade. Not stabilizing, corrected his science officer, a crystalline being from the eternal reaches. They're controlling it, using the cascade's energy to power something. The answer came as Europa suddenly appeared directly in front of the Alliance fleet, its surface crawling with weapons that had never been seen before. Weapons that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Elena's voice echoed across all Council frequencies. You had your chance, she said simply. Now watch what happens when you force evolution. The 7 moons began to move in. Perfect synchronization, their dimensional drives creating ripples in space-time itself. But they weren't fleeing or attacking. They were dancing. As they moved, the stellar cascade began to change, its chaotic energy patterns smoothing into something that looked almost like They're turning the cascade into a drive system, the science officer whispered, using an entire star's death throes as a power source for dimensional manipulation. For what purpose? Veltar demanded. The answer came as every human ship in the system suddenly vanished, jumping away to coordinates unknown. Even the massive lunar fortresses disappeared, leaving only empty space where humanity's greatest achievement had been. Then the reports started coming in from across the galaxy. Human colonies that had been evacuated were suddenly reappearing, not in their original locations but in star systems that had never been mapped. Systems that seemed to exist outside normal space-time, accessible only through dimensional technology. They're not just leaving the galaxy, the science officer realized. They're creating their own. Elena's voice returned, broadcast from somewhere beyond the reach of Council sensors. The Galactic Council had 3,000 years to build a civilization based on cooperation and mutual aid, she said. Instead, you built one based on convenience and calculated cruelty. When 4 billion humans faced extinction, you voted to watch us die. When we found our own solution, you decided we were too dangerous to exist. The transmission paused, and in that silence, every species in the Alliance felt the weight of their choices. You were right, Elena continued. We are too dangerous. Too dangerous to be your servants, your entertainment, or your victims, so we're leaving, all of us. Every human colony, every human ship, every trace of our existence in this galaxy. Where are you going? Veltar found himself asking. Somewhere you can never follow us. Somewhere you can never hurt us again. Elena's voice carried a note of finality that made hardened warriors shiver. But before we go, we leave you with a gift. The Kepler system star suddenly flared, its cascade energy spiking beyond all known parameters. For a moment, the Alliance fleet prepared for the death of another system. Instead, the star stabilized. The cascade stopped. 4 billion humans, who had been waiting to die, were suddenly impossibly safe. Consider it our farewell present, Elena said. The technique we used can be applied to any unstable star. We're leaving the data in a probe that will arrive at Council space in exactly 1 year. Use it wisely. Wait, Veltar called out desperately. You can't just leave. The galaxy needs to learn to take care of itself. Elena interrupted. For 3,000 years, whenever a crisis arose, you found someone else to handle it. The Devourers threatened everyone, so you let humans develop weapons that horrified you. Stellar instability threatened your trade routes, so you let humans do the dangerous research. Pirates attacked your shipping, so you hired human mercenaries. The truth of it hit the Alliance like a physical blow. You treated us like a useful tool, Elena continued. Something to be picked up when needed and put away when convenient. You never saw us as equals, partners, or friends. You saw us as a solution to problems you didn't want to handle yourselves. We can change, Veltar said, and hated how desperate he sounded. The Council can be reformed. We can... No, you can't. Because the problem isn't your government or your laws. The problem is that you never learned to see other species as truly equal to yourselves. Every Council decision was made based on what benefited the majority of species, with minorities expected to accept whatever scraps they were given. Elena's voice softened slightly, taking on an almost pitying tone. Do you know what we call that? Where we come from, Praetor? We call it tyranny of the majority, and we left that behind a long time ago. The transmission ended, leaving the Alliance fleet alone in a system where a star had been saved by the species they'd tried to destroy. Over the following months, reports trickled in from across the galaxy. Human colonies vanishing overnight. Human-operated facilities simply ceasing to exist. Trade routes that had depended on human engineering expertise grinding to a halt. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the galaxy's edge. Space itself seemed to be changing there, taking on properties that no Council scientist could explain. It was as if reality itself was being rewritten by mathematics that existed beyond current understanding. The humans weren't just leaving. They were taking their knowledge, their capabilities, and their potential with them. And they were building something new in a place where the Council could never reach them. A year later, as promised, an automated probe arrived at the Council's capital world. It contained the stellar stabilization technique along with a simple message. The universe is vast enough for everyone to find their place in it. We have found ours. Use this gift to help others find theirs. Do not look for us again. By then, the galaxy was learning what it meant to exist without humanity. Epilogue. The Price of Evolution. 5 years after the departure, Praetor Veltar stood in his private chambers, staring out at a galaxy that had changed beyond recognition. The Great Council chamber was mostly empty these days. Half the member species had withdrawn, forming smaller alliances or reverting to isolationism. Trade routes that had operated for millennia had collapsed. Technological advancement had slowed to a crawl. The galaxy was dying, slowly but surely, and everyone knew why. A soft chime announced a visitor. Veltar didn't turn around as counselor. Thex entered, his tentacles moving with the careful precision of someone in constant pain. The Zephyrian colonies have gone dark, Thex reported. Their crystal technology requires constant adjustment, and they never learned to do it themselves. The humans always handled the technical aspects. How many systems is that now? 47. The Stellar Cascade Prevention Network has lost almost half its monitoring stations. We're getting reports of stellar instability from 12 sectors that were previously stable. Veltar finally turned around. The years had not been kind to him. His carapace was dull, his movement slower. Like the galaxy itself, he was showing signs of decay. Any word from the deep swimmers? They established contact with the humans 6 months ago. They won't tell us how, but they've been sharing resources and knowledge. Thex's tentacles writhed with frustrated anger. They're thriving while we struggle with basic maintenance. Because they chose correctly, Veltar said quietly. They saw what we were doing to humanity and chose to stand with them instead of us. It's not too late, Thex insisted. We could send envoys, attempt to make contact. They told us not to look for them. Veltar moved to his desk, where reports from across the galaxy painted a picture of slow collapse. And even if we could find them, what would we say? Sorry. We tried to commit genocide against your species. Please come back and fix our problems. Thex fell silent, his tentacles coiling around themselves in distress. A new chime announced another visitor. This time it was Veltar's aide, a young member of his own species who had never known the galaxy with humans in it. Praetor, we're receiving a transmission from the Outer Rim. It's unusual. Show me. The wall screen activated, revealing a sight that made both Veltar and Thex freeze in shock. It was a human, clearly human, despite the subtle differences in her features and the way light seemed to bend around her slightly, as if she existed in more dimensions than normal space could properly contain. Greetings, Galactic Council, she said, her voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't have been possible. I am Dr. Sarah Chen Vasquez, speaking on behalf of the Human Dimensional Collective. Veltar's mandibles clicked in recognition. Ambassador Chen. But you died 3 years ago. The report said your ship was lost in a dimensional experiment. The woman smiled, and her expression held depths that made Veltar's compound eyes water to look at directly. Sarah Chen was my grandmother. I'm named for her, and yes, her ship was lost to your dimension. She found us instead. Us? The collective. What humanity became when we stopped limiting ourselves to three-dimensional thinking. The woman's image flickered slightly as if she were broadcasting from somewhere that existed between realities. We've been watching the galaxy's decline with interest and some concern. Thex leaned forward, his tentacles trembling with hope. You've come back to help us? Help you? Sarah Chen Vasquez laughed, a sound like distant thunder. No, Counselor. Thex, we didn't come back to help you, we came back to offer you a choice. The transmission expanded, showing not just the woman, but the space around her. What Veltar saw made his breath catch. Ships that weren't quite ships, structures that folded through dimensions, beings that looked human but moved with impossible grace through spaces that hurt to perceive. This is what we've become, she continued. In 5 years we've evolved beyond your ability to comprehend. We exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. We've learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to step outside of time itself, when necessary. We've made contact with forms of intelligence that your species can't even perceive. Then why contact us at all? Veltar asked, though he dreaded the answer. Because the galaxy is dying, and that death will eventually reach into our dimension. Stellar cascades, technological collapse, the breakdown of civilizations, all of it creates ripples in higher dimensional space. We can feel your pain, Praetor, whether we want to or not. Sarah gestured, and the display showed a map of the galaxy. Vast sections were marked in red, indicating failing systems and collapsed civilizations. You have a choice, she said. Continue on your current path and watch your 300-species alliance crumble into nothing. Eventually, you'll destroy yourselves through ignorance and neglect, and the dimensional damage will be unpleasant for us to deal with. Or, Veltar whispered, or you accept our offer. We'll share the basic stabilization technologies, enough to keep your stars from collapsing, your trade routes functional, your civilizations intact. In exchange, you do something you've never done before, which is... Sarah's smile became sharper, more predatory. You learn. You grow. You evolve. She leaned forward, and for a moment Veltar could swear he saw the ghost of her grandmother's diplomatic fury in her eyes. No more expecting others to solve your problems. No more throwing away species you find inconvenient. No more tyranny of the majority. We accept, Thex said immediately. Whatever the terms are simple, Sarah interrupted. Every species in the former council gets equal representation in whatever government you build next, not proportional representation, based on population or resources. Equal representation. One species, one vote, regardless of size or power. Veltar felt his blood chill. That's impossible. The smaller species would outnumber the founding members. They could vote to redistribute resources, territory. Yes, Sarah said pleasantly. They could. Just like you voted to let 4 billion humans die because it was convenient for the majority. Her voice hardened. Funny how tyranny feels different when you're the minority, isn't it? The implications sank in slowly. Under such a system, the powerful species that had dominated the council for millennia would be reduced to equal partners with civilizations they'd barely acknowledged. Species with only a few million citizens would have the same voice as empires, spanning hundreds of worlds. You're asking us to give up everything we've built, Veltar said. We're asking you to build something better, Sarah corrected. Something based on actual equality instead of convenient hierarchy. Something that won't abandon entire species when helping them becomes difficult. She paused, letting that sink in. Of course you can refuse. Continue trying to hold together your collapsing alliance through force and tradition. See how long that lasts without the technological foundation you never bothered to understand. Thex looked at Veltar desperately. We have to accept. The alternative is the death of galactic civilization. The alternative, Sarah said softly, is learning what my grandmother learned 5 years ago. That sometimes the only way to save something is to let it die first. Her image began to fade. You have 1 standard year to decide. After that, we close the dimensional gateway and leave you to your choices. Wait, Veltar called out. If we accept your terms, what guarantee do we have that you won't simply abandon us again when it suits you? Sarah's smile was sad and ancient, carrying the weight of a species that had been betrayed and had learned to be better than their betrayers. No guarantee at all, Praetor. You'll just have to trust us. Her image flickered one last time. The same way we trusted you. The transmission ended, leaving Veltar and Thex alone with the weight of their species' future. Outside the chamber's viewport, the galaxy turned in its ancient dance, unaware that its next evolutionary step was being decided by beings who had once begged for help and been turned away. In dimensions beyond normal perception, humanity watched and waited, having learned that true strength wasn't the power to destroy your enemies. It was the power to save them from themselves. Even when they didn't deserve it. The end.